so far this week?
It's going good. The thing that I'm real happy with right now is our scout team is a legitimate scout team. We got legitimate scholarship players and depth on the scout team, which challenges us to have a more competitive practice for the full 2 hours, which is not something that we've necessarily had. I think I mentioned, I think our first year we had 51 walk-ons in the program, and those guys were awesome. But it's just different right now from a competition standpoint. So, I've been pleased with that. It's you're never going to be completely satisfied. Well, I wasn't real happy yesterday, but then you get in and you watch the tape, and the tape is better than we thought. So it's competitive right now. Scout team's stepping it up, challenged on both sides of the ball. One of the things I'm real happy with is we did a lot of noise work this summer during camp with music and everything else going, and I thought today with the fight song going, blaring at practice, we didn't have any issues with it. So that's important for us.
What have you seen from Sharif in practice this week?
Really good. I said something to him yesterday. I think he's tasted success, and I don't want what I said after the game to be misinterpreted. It's not like he was practicing poorly, but I haven't seen him practice the way he played in the game. And when guys figure that out, they have a chance to elevate their game to a whole nother level, and that was the case with Sharif. He's tasted a little bit of success. I have a very good relationship with Sharif, so does Coach Spencer. And then you sit down and you have that type of conversation with him, and he's practicing at a much higher level right now. So I think it's a combination of success he had and then also the conversations we've had. So I'm excited about his future. Again, you think about he's a redshirt freshman, had 2 sacks. And Buckholz with a redshirt freshman, and his first game, both those guys had 1 and 2 sacks. So pretty cool.
With the new coaches on the staff, what was the communication like in the first actual game you guys played?
It was good. We once again we didn't wait until the first game to do it. We had 2 scrimmages ahead of time where we went into the stadium and had coaches in the booth. So that was basically the 3rd time we had done it. So it was really good. I didn't get any feedback. I know there's been conversations about their headsets from their staff. They had some problems last week, so we are going to check it 4 times before the game. We've also called the Steelers and asked them anything to be aware of or any issues, frequency issues. Same thing with the Cleveland Browns. We're going to bring wires, so if we have to do like East Stroudsburg, where you run it up the stands, through the stands, up into the press box, we're going to do whatever we have to do. The cup with the string on it, whatever.
You bring all your own stuff for that, or are they supplies?
Well, you bring your own stuff, but then you have to plug it in to their hard wires. Probably no different than you guys, I would think.
You had issues like that in Ireland, didn't you?
Yes, but that was George O'Leary and his cousins.
James, you mentioned on Tuesday that you guys were close to making a decision on the status of Cam Brown as a yellow light. Has that decision been made, and what are you seeing from him?
We've had 2 conversations with him. One yesterday that I was involved with, another one today that I think Coach Pry was involved with. Haven't followed back up. It was right before practice, and some meetings came up that I had to deal with. He's what would yellow and green make? What my girls?
Light green.
Huh?
Light green.
Yeah, so he's light green right now. We're closer to making a decision. Haven't decided. We had a long discussion about how many units on special teams we see him contributing on, as well as his role on defense growing as the season goes on. So he's more of a light green right now.
James, what have you seen on film this week from Pitt's offensive line, and what kind of challenge do they pose for your defense this weekend?
Well, I think they're big, and they're physical, and they're veteran and experienced. But I think the other thing is, I think it's clearly obvious that they had a plan to be vanilla in that first game. So not only are we going to see the power running game, they did not use Jordan Whitehead in that game. Jordan Whitehead will play offense against us. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So we spent a lot of time, looking at the fly sweep, how we're gonna defend the fly sweep, not only from Jordan Whitehead, but what their offensive coordinator did when he was at NC State, as well as Wisconsin. So I think we're going to see a lot more of those types of things. Special teams, we're spending a lot of time preparing on fakes, things like that. So I know they've spent a lot of time in the off season on this game, so we want to make sure we're prepared for all those things.
Have you ever been part of a team or an organization where you have a story similar to what James Conner's gone through? Maybe if so or if not, how do you think
his story can maybe affect the team's overall psyche, or maybe those guys want to play for him after what he's been through?
Oh, I have not experienced anything like this, but I don't think there's any doubt that he's inspired their team, not only by his play, but the challenges and the adversity that he's overcome and how he's handled it. I mean, as we all saw some of the video this summer of him on the treadmill and other things, the guy's a warrior. So much respect to him. I'm a fan of James Conner and always will be.
Will you have any former players address these guys before the game? Is that part of the plan? I know Terry did, but anything other than that?
Possibly.
Maybe.
Possibly. We could have some former players. We always have speakers.
Okay.
So yeah, I think 2 years ago when we played, or I guess it was last year, we played in Maryland. We had some former speakers. So yeah, that's a possibility.
Kind of going off that, last few years, guys.
I didn't hear the beginning.
Kind of going off of that, guys from New Jersey the last few years in Maryland have talked about how they sense an uptick in their body language and everything leading up to the game. Have you noticed that in some of the Pennsylvania guys, and maybe is a mood changed in the locker room?
A little bit. Again, this game, as we all know, I don't need to sit here and say it's important for them to feel that. I actually want the opposite. I don't know if you guys remember when we played Maryland, and right in the beginning of the game, Marcus Allen got a penalty on their sideline, juiced up. So we just want to make sure that we have our composure and we have our poise, and we go out and play as hard as we possibly can and execute. And I want them to play with passion. I want them to play with emotion, but right up to the edge without having any issues. And I could imagine this is going to be a game. There's probably going to be a lot of things screamed at our buses when we drive in. There's probably going to be a lot of things screamed from the stands, colorful things like "Welcome to Pittsburgh" and things like that. But again, I want our guys focused on the things that they can control, and we're going to have some support there as well.
Pat Narduzzi mentioned this morning on the ACC conference call that they've really done a heavy dive into all of the Fordham film and cut-ups, and then the blue-white game as well. What's the emphasis been on disguising plays that might not have been in the past, or what has the emphasis on disguises and checks been?
Yeah, the same thing as every week. I mean, everybody goes back and watches film, especially when you're playing a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator. Just like I said, we went back and watched NC State. We went back and watched Wisconsin. They've done the same thing with Joe. So that's normal preparation that most people do, especially in an early season game where these are the things you're doing in the off season.
Tyler Davis had said that he hadn't really played a full football game until last year. So how hard is that for a soccer player to adjust that late in his career to be a football player and then have a perfect record like you do?
Well, I think it depends on the position. Obviously, being a kicker, that helps. But there are some things that you might take for granted about the game that you're trying to explain and the importance of it, and they don't really get. Same thing with Daniel Pasquarella. Fortunate those guys now have been in the program for time. We talk a lot about situational football. We put a lot of examples of film and other things that happen around the country. The Western Michigan Northwestern situation that happened this weekend. We're constantly showing them examples to try to get them to understand situational football and understand the game a little bit better. So hopefully we can learn from other people's mistakes without making them ourselves. But there's just so many situations in football. But he's handled it really well. Fortunately for him, his job, he doesn't need to necessarily understand 4-minute offense or 2-minute offense or things like that. It helps him, but he needs to kick the ball through the uprights consistently.
You talked about Whitehead being prepared for him on offense. Who would play him on your scout team? Can you let us know that? Or?
Yeah, I don't think we really have. I don't think we really have anybody. He's a dynamic athlete and a dynamic player. Most of those guys that we have like him are up with our varsity. So we got some guys that we rotate. I think McPherson is a guy that's done it for us. Josh, not Zeke. Josh is giving us some looks.
What about the formation?
I feel like you're giving him extra questions today, Chris.
But it's a big week, so you're free.
Yeah.
You're talking about seeing things you haven't seen before. What about the formation you guys saw last week? Anything you can learn from that? Was that a teachable moment for you guys?
Oh, very much so. Again, that's issues with the first game. The thing that they did a nice job of, is a lot of people will do that, but when they did it, the center went out. And that was actually the tight end that was snapping the ball, and then the receiver to the side was off the ball, which made the tight end eligible. So when he snapped the ball and released, we had to cover him. Only one linebacker should have went with him. Both linebackers went with him, and it left the middle of the field open. So that's one of those things, again, there's 1,000 things that you can cover in the summer, and that was something that was a nice little wrinkle on their part. We made an adjustment. But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for growth for our guys to understand the difference between an eligible center and an ineligible center, and that was a good plan for them.
So where does your 2-point conversion try? Where does that fit in with that? Is that going to be the norm?
No, that was more of a mentality thing for us. Basically, from the time Joe was hired, he's been talking to me about going for 2 after the first score here with the new offense. Kind of a mentality, being aggressive. We talked about it all off season. Never agreed to it. Talked about it all camp. Still hadn't agreed to it. Talked about it all week. Agreed to it. And I think, again, if you go back and you study all the analytics people, you can make an argument that you should never punt, and you should onside kick every single time. Like that one high school does. There hasn't been a college coach that has the gumption to do that yet. You can if you obviously we use a lot of these analytics companies, and there's some real arguments you can make. Obviously, once the game gets going, you go to the 2-point chart and you use those types of things. But that opening score, it was more of a mentality thing than anything for us on offense.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.